going to show you the full running of the 1992 7th Los Angeles Marathon.
They came from places in another world, each with a plan, each with a dream, each with the thought of standing out above the crowd. And in time, all around them, the city sprouted roots. Los Angeles has become a sprawling megalopolis of cultures and townships, and today it provides the background for all the ideals that made it what it is. Today, as before, there's a plan, a dream, and the thought of standing out above the crowd. Some things never change. KCOP presents the 7th renewal of the City of Los Angeles Marathon. It's an event that engulfs a community, thousands of runners, 1.5 million well-wishers, a movable feast, an ongoing festival, an event that has become a part of the fiber of the city itself. It winds its way through a circuitous 26 miles, beginning at the Coliseum. It passes through cultures like Gulliver through the Lilliputians, Little Tokyo, Chinatown, Olvera Street, Koreatown. For all intent, the race starts during the long, heart-pounding stretch of sunset. This is where things are usually won or lost. Today's stars and wannabe stars follow the stars on Hollywood Boulevard. And if you think Sunset and Vine is crowded every day, you ain't seen nothing. I'll be the one in the shorts and the tank top. This is a race for the people, and today the fashionable spot is Rodeo Road, not Rodeo Drive. Then it's over where it started. 2, 3, 4 hours later, all for a plan, a dream, and for one, a chance to rise above the crowd. And just like that, it is time for the main event. Some 20,000 runners will cross the start line this morning, most out to compete only against themselves, to beat the clock. But for 85 or so of the world's best, this is all business. Not just get there, but get there fast. Beat yourself, yes. Beat the clock, yes. But beat the field and beat it out of town, $20,000 richer, and driving a new Mercedes. And then there's the race for the folks, and that's what you saw right there. Hello again, everybody. I'm Barry Tompkins, and welcome to the 7th running of the Los Angeles Marathon, an all-star cast alongside to help you tell us about the next 4 hours or so. And there's an awful lot of racing, awful lot of people, and an awful lot of stories all built into this one race called the LA Marathon. My partner, as always, for this event and about 1 million others, Larry Rawson. And that's, I think, the charm of this event, Larry, is that it is not only just a marathon race for the world's great runners, but it's a lot of other things to a lot of other people.
Barry, politics doesn't do it. Maybe a championship of the world will do it for an athlete of another sport, such as basketball here in Los Angeles. But no other day during the year in Los Angeles can Mayor Tom Bradley hope to have such a unifying spirit through all the disparate parts of his town. We all think that the United Nations is really based in New York, and if you spend time in Los Angeles, it's really here in L.A. And I think you can pull this unifying spirit back to everybody. It's a wonderful, wonderful day of communion and active sharing for everybody involved, the whole town.
I think that's really too. Well, what we've already seen is the wheelchair race underway. The walkers are already underway. There's a 5K race that's just about to get started. And, of course, the men's elite race promises to be a terrific one. But maybe the story of the day is the women's race. We actually have the Soviet women's Olympic qualifying going on here in Los Angeles. Who'd have thunk that about 4 years ago? You talk about women in marathon racing, and it might have all started here. Boston Marathon, 1967. Remember that woman? Catherine Switzer. They tried to get her off the course. She fought on. All the people around her fought on. Here's the scene. Remember this scene? I think it's been in every newspaper, every magazine all across America. Every time there is a marathon of any import, Catherine Switzer went on, not to win the race, but to win a fight. And here she is right now with us for expert commentary today. Catherine?
Larry and Barry, I'm going to be with those lead women. I'm going to have one of the best seats in the house because I'm going to be here on this motorcycle sidecar following the lead women. We're going to try to drop back if we can and pick up some of the other competitors who may come through because this is a come-from-behind race. But we're going to be with the leaders for the most part, following some of those top Soviets and others, including Madina Biktagarova, of course, who comes in here with the fastest qualifying time at 2:28 that she ran in a very competitive London race. She's going to be really up there with the field. Also, of course, Ramilia Burangulova, who is one of the most adaptable women marathoners in the world. She can run in heat, on hills, in anything, and she recovers very quickly. The third one I'm going to be looking strongly for also is Canadian Lisanne Boussière, who is going to shake up the field with her speed. You know, she still competes internationally on the track in every distance from 3,000 to 10,000 meters, and that speed is going to translate well with her in the marathon today. So watch out for a really strong depth of field in the women's race, and watch out for women coming from behind. If we can track them, we will. Now let's go to my colleague, Tony Revis, who's going to be on the lead men's truck.
My 7th year in the lead vehicle. I've just taken my ibuprofen, so it shouldn't be too painful a journey for me. You know, I need all my fingers and toes to really tell you who might be the favorites in the men's race today, but if I had to pick 3 just out of the hat, let's begin with Ireland's John Treacy, who's got perhaps the best record here in L.A. He won the silver medal in his first marathon of his career back in 1984 at the Olympic Games, and he's in prime shape for this competition. In the second position, really, is New Zealand's Peter Renner, age 32, who's run a 2:12:35. He just won the half marathon, breaking a course record by 3 minutes. He's in top form as well. And then the final man, the 1988 winner, Martin Mondragon. And now let's go to Tony Hernandez, somewhere high above, taking it all in.
And this race is underway, and while we find Tony Hernandez, we take a look at the lead runners. There's the usual pack of wannabes who kind of try to get out ahead of everybody else. That seems to happen with every marathon race, and it looks, Larry, as though it's happened here too.
Well, when you see guys sprint out as though they're running 200 meters, you know that they won't be around very long. What you try and do in a marathon that's very wise to do, you don't want to be up here in the top 10% of all those people that you see, Barry, if you're a relatively slow runner. It's pretty discouraging to watch half the world in Los Angeles run by you over the next 20-plus miles.
Talk about some of the other participants in this event as they literally jumped the gun a little bit on us here, but there's a strong Mexican contingent. We have seen that in past Los Angeles marathons, Larry. Well, they will train at altitude around the Mexico City area and come down here while it's a little bit early in the season and really do a job on the field here.
Barry, Mexico City is located at 7,550 feet of elevation, much higher than even Albuquerque or most cities in the United States. The air up there is 23% thinner than what we all breathe here in Los Angeles. And the point is, it's like legalized blood doping is what you're getting. The thinner air that you're making your body get used to training on. You come down here and you're getting much more oxygenated blood into air into your system. And the end result is you run a lot faster in a marathon. So a guy may adapt better than his colleague who's run 2 hours and 24 minutes for a best at Mexico City. You never know what's going to happen here. And
some non-Mexican athletes kind of borrowing a page from what the Mexicans have done. They've been training in Flagstaff, Arizona, which is also at altitude.
That's exactly right. In Flagstaff, Boulder, we now have large contingents of top distance runners, world-class athletes, who are foreigners, who are living here in the United States because there's a more lucrative road race schedule, and those people are actually training up at 5,000 and 7,000 feet every month and living there. John Treacy, who lives in Rhode Island at sea level, has gone off twice for periods of almost 2 of the last 3 months to train at altitude to get ready for this race.
A little bit of disorganization, obviously, at the start. As you can see, some of the everyday racers or everyman racers, if you will, kind of getting up a little bit closer to the elite racers than you would expect. Now, normally what's been happening in marathons is they will start the elite runners, they'll put a little bit of gap between them and everybody else, and it really doesn't look as though that happened here.
No, you're right, and we should add here that it could take, these guys could be at the mile mark, and people will still be back there crossing the starting line, and it's fair for them to start their watches, of course, when they hit that starting line to say what they've done. What a spectacular sight. The official number of people we've been told is 19,481 people have registered for this race. That's the largest Los Angeles marathon. Every year but one, the figure, Barry, has gone up, and it makes it the #3 largest marathon in the world. Only London and New York have more athletes, and nobody's ever done it in such a short period of time.
And you could see, you talk about a field being bunched, and while the angle of that camera makes it look a little bit more bunched than it really is, there are a whole bunch of people running near the pace. As you take a look at how big a field, you talked about the 19,000 plus, they were going to draw the line at 20,000. They weren't going to let any more, and they came within, what, 60 or 70 athletes of that 20,000 mark. And again, here is everybody else. These are the folks who are running against themselves to beat the clock, and here, of course, is a man, we were talking about him a little bit earlier, bigger than life.
Muhammad Ali started the race last year, did so again, came here as a personal friend of Dr. Bill Burke's, and the crowd in last year's event, I didn't hear it this year, but stood there and chanted, Ali, Ali, before the race.
Yeah, still, I see him all over the place, and he is still, will always get the biggest ovation. and he still has that ability just to kind of mesmerize a crowd, and he also has absolutely impeccable timing to this day.
You know, one thing we should tell everybody that may not know it, the psychomotor skills are a problem. The hand-eye coordination, all that have been affected by the disease, but the brain, I'm told, works as well as ever, which is wonderful news to all Ali fans and friends of the sport.
Truly remarkable man, Muhammad Ali, and there he is, signing autographs as he always has. In this day when not a lot of athletes do that, it just says something about the man. Meanwhile, the race continues, and as you can see, this is one of the problems here, is that for the first mile, oftentimes, you can't even really get going.
That's true. Yeah. But, you know, for these people, it's not that critical. And they'll judge their time when they pass the starting line, and it's the spirit and the excitement of the event. It's not necessarily how you ski down the hill. It's all the camaraderie of the weekend, too.
I do want to mention that we have our own runner in this race. Tim McClune has come out here from New Jersey. He's a marathon runner. He's run New York. He's run Boston. He's actually managed marathon events, but he's never run a marathon west of the Hudson River, maybe. But here he is out here today, and we're going to be going to him and get his reports as we go along. It's interesting to me, at least, to see an East Coast person's view of a West Coast marathon, because it is different. The party atmosphere, I think, is perhaps a little bit greater.
I'm sure you share with me a feeling, while we can see all these runners on the screen, we'll be focusing more on the elites, at least during the body of the race. But let's tip our hat to all of the people who have trained and prepared for this race, and we wish them all well out there. We thank all of their support system out there, friends and relatives, for what they've done.
Take a look at how this marathon has grown. Look at back in 1986, there were 10,000 runners, or just about 10,000 runners, 33 elite runners. Those, of course, are numbered runners on the right and the total numbers on the left. And look how it has grown until this year, as Larry Rawson mentioned, 19,400 and something, with 116 elite runners last year. We have about 85 this year. That makes for a more manageable elite field and a very competitive elite field as well.
I wish all of our viewers, and myself included, had stocks over the last 5 years that went up as much.
You did?
Yeah, I don't know about that. 99,000 plus have competed here in New York. And if you adjust just a little bit for inflation, you're up over 100,000 runners have competed in the first 6 years of the competition here in Los Angeles.
And we come to the 1 mile mark. As you can see, 1/26th of this race is just about over. Again, the weather conditions absolutely ideal. There was a lot of talk about rain this morning, and that would both literally and figuratively dampen everyone's hopes for a fast time, and even for some of the other runners just finishing the race. But so far, I would have to say, Larry, at least in my limited marathon experience, that these are just about as good conditions as you can find.
For Los Angeles, that's true, Barry. Ideal perfect temperatures might be more like 45 degrees and overcast for the elite athletes and for the rest of the spectators. We've averaged 58 degrees here in Los Angeles the first 6 years of this race. It was 56 degrees just a couple of minutes before race time.
All right, well, we mentioned earlier that Tim McClune was our man in this race. Neither one of those people is Tim McClune. I can tell you that unequivocally. And that is not Tim McClune that is driving the Mercedes either. I can also tell you that we will be going to Tim McClune, as we mentioned earlier, along the way. Meanwhile, back at the start-finish line, this is really in the area where our Tim McClune is right now. He wants to run with the pack. He wants to get the real feel, the real sense of what this race is all about. So Tim very likely just coming across the finish line now, and I'm sure he'll wave to Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali again continuing to greet everyone. Mayor Bradley alongside him, and you just can't say enough about this man. Brought the sport of boxing back from the dead. Let's go to Tim McClune right now. He is out among them somewhere. Tim, I can't find you, but tell me what's going on all around you.
Well, we're just starting out now. Actually, we're about to start running. If you could have harnessed all the energy that was...
6 degrees just a couple of minutes before race time.
All right, well, we mentioned earlier that Tim McClune was our man in this race. Neither one of those people is Tim McClune. I can tell you that unequivocally. And that is not Tim McClune that is driving the Mercedes either. I can also tell you that we will be going to Tim McClune, as we mentioned earlier, along the way. Meanwhile, back at the start-finish line, this is really in the area where our Tim McClune is right now. He wants to run with the pack. He wants to get the real feel, the real sense of what this race is all about. So Tim very likely just coming across the finish line now, and I'm sure he'll wave to Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali again continuing to greet everyone. Mayor Bradley alongside him, and you just can't say enough about this man. Brought the sport of boxing back from the dead. Let's go to Tim McClune right now. He is out among them somewhere. Tim, I can't find you, but tell me what's going on all around you.
Well, we're just starting out now. Actually, we're about to start running. If you could have harnessed all the energy that was around here over the last few minutes, I think we could have powered all of L.A. County for about 3 weeks. but I'm here with some of the Students Run LA group. We're about to get started. I guess we're already 7 minutes behind, so we're not going to win this race. But now remember, repeat after me. We're going to go all the way. We're going to finish this race. We are really stupid to be doing this. You are really stupid. All right, let's go. Come on, let's go.
I might have to agree with it. That's Tim McClune, so he is off. We will check back with him all along. Tim says he'd like to run about a 7-minute pace, so that'll kind of give you an idea of where he is in the great scheme of things. As you look at the 1 mile mark now, pretty much about half the field has gone past the 1 mile mark. We haven't yet caught up with the elite runners out on the pace. We, of course, will do that and cover that race. We want to cover the whole scene here, and scene perhaps is the operable word, Larry.
Here we get our first glimpse of some of the top people up in the lead, and as this starts to melt down and the elite survives, we'll bring all this stuff to you.
All right, the wheelchair race got underway about an hour ago, and they are well into their race now. Jim Knopf is the favorite in the race, and right now that is Badid, Mustafa Badid, who is running in front. That's Knopf in 3rd place right at the moment. Those are 3 of the better racers amongst, and that's who's up there right now. Knopf, Molinari, and Badid. The race should be joined between those 3. Knopf, clearly the favorite. We've talked about it. He is a guy almost without peer in his event.
Well, that's a good way to put it. I mean, Badid has had some great races, but the man whose comeback has held well for the last 3 years is Knopf. And interestingly enough, if you're in your 40s or so and you like to cheer for the older athletes, and they seem to be holding on in most sports, as you know, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did until his 40s, he is 36 years of age and competing at the very best level he's ever attained in the past, and that's quite a tribute to him.
And again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but maybe not for this audience, and that is the simple fact that they will trade lead. It is just a part of the whole business, very much like NASCAR racing. They will draft, they will back off, they will let somebody else go into the wind for a little bit while the race will really be run in the last 2 or 3 miles. Here is the way it stands right now after 9 miles. Jim Knopf, 34 minutes into this one. Claude Isoura of France, somehow in there, and Andre Vigier. But right now, that shot that we saw a moment ago, that is Badid in front and Knopf back in 2nd place right now.
Notice again, I mentioned earlier in the telecast that they're up centered over the middle of the road. It's easier to notice the cant also of the wheels. Part of that is done so that it will not shape the underarms of the upper part of their bicep. They also, if you will notice here, look at the different size and configuration of the rim that they're wheeling on. Some guys like the smaller rims like that, others like the bigger. It's like shifting on a gear shift on a car. And some people on the flats it will help, such as number 145, who is Isorat, but the bigger wheels make it easier for you to go up the hills.
Yeah, let me set that straight. That leaderboard was exactly right, and that is Isorat and Vigier up there with Knopf right now. So that's the way it stands, 1, 2, 3, and now it is Knopf who is on the front, and he will back off after about a half a mile. They will trade it. Right at the moment, Molinari and Badid, and remember, Badid started this race with the flu. He did have a temperature before the start of the race, so we'll see how much strength he has left. Those are the 3 leaders in the wheelchair race right now. Meanwhile, some of the starters in the everyman's race, if you will, just now getting underway, coming under the start-finish line. A long way to go for them. And there will be runners finishing almost on into tomorrow. We are in the midst of the running of the 7th Los Angeles Marathon. This is just about where the runners are right now. They have just headed into Little Tokyo, on their way out of Little Tokyo, actually, about 4 miles into the elite race right now. And you can see, we talked about the fact that one of the nice things about this race is the ethnic background. And here in Little Tokyo, of course, Japanese band playing right now for some of the athletes. There's just an awful lot of this everywhere you go. Not only in Little Tokyo, you'll see it in Albero Street, you'll see it in Koreatown, you'll see it in Chinatown, you'll see it all along the route. Let's take a look at the leaders as they stand right now. This leaderboard sponsored by Cathay Pacific Airways, 1992 LA Marathon after 3 miles. This is the women's division. Valentina Yegorova in front, and all those names, Larry, are names that we expect will be there for the better part of the race.
We expect some other nationalities up there. Marcia Narlock from Brazil should be one, but you're seeing that those top 4 are the Russians.
All right, let's get out to the women's race then, and as we mentioned earlier, Catherine Switzer will be covering the leaders all day long for us. Catherine, right now, seems to be pretty much as it has been expected to be.
You're right, Barry. It is really as it is expected, with Valentina Yegorova right there in the red, taking the lead, and behind her, some people might be surprised to see in the green, Madina Biktagarova from the Soviet Union. She has a very fast half marathon time, and tucked it in behind her in 3rd place, Amelia.
All right, we'll get back to Catherine Switzer. And one of the problems, of course, with covering the marathon, you make a turn, and all of a sudden the signal changes. We will get back to Catherine Switzer, and we will cover the women's race for you, beginning to end virtually. But right now, the Soviets up there, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Things will change. Meanwhile, the race for everyone continues. 19,000 runners running against themselves and running against the clock.
Barry, these people that you're seeing on your screen will not have it as good as Spiridon Lewis, the first winner of the Olympic marathon, because in that race, they allowed the contestants to drink wine.
That's right.
So it's festive here in L.A., but it won't be quite that festive for everybody out there. They also had personal trainers in that first race to go alongside and cheer the people on.
Never know. I've run in a couple of races where people are drinking wine. I might have been one of them. I don't know. You can see everybody stopping to bug for the cameras. A lot of times, running in a marathon race, the adrenaline gets going so much. There's a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, and an awful lot of laughing, and that's really what marathon running is all about.
You remind me of a funny story that these people are out there in the race, and they won't have the same chance, but Fred Lebow, the organizer and really the guru behind the New York Roadrunners, first race he ever competed in 1972, a guy said to him, I want you to go to this race. He did. It was a loop course, and 4 times he came by the same point, and 4 times he said, the first time I thought the guy was giving me iced tea, and it was bourbon. And he said, I thought this is what they did at every marathon.
That, of course, was the Jack Daniels marathon that was run, when was that? Tennessee, right? You can see still walkers coming across the line. There are some people out here, a gentleman 90 years old, hopes to run the marathon in 9 hours today, and I'll tell you what, he gets a gold medal as far as I'm concerned.
Manning Ween, and I think we've got to introduce him at least to the date book when he's through with this race of George Burns or something, and these guys can compare notes. We have been very impressed with our time spent with him.
90 years old, I hope to be able to read a map of Los Angeles, let alone run it. Meanwhile, you can continue to see the masses of people, and still, it's very early in the race for them. It's a lot of spunk right here, but let's come back to them at about 20 miles and see how much there is.
One of the interesting things that you see right on your screen right now is you begin to develop camaraderie and friendships with people that you've never met there, and there's a real bonding that goes on, and you help each other. You might say, what do you hope to do it in? Oh, I hope to do it in this time. Well, let's run together, and that's very common for 2, 3, or 5 people to start out that way. And if you finish together, you frequently keep in touch for life through Christmas cards and the like.
What's very common for me is to ask, where does it hurt? I can relate to that.
I've asked that after races.
Here are the men's leaders, and they continue to be 2 racers who we will continue to call non-factors, only because it is not likely that they will be there when the end comes, but right now still running pretty much on form, although starting to labor just a little bit. Tony Revis is amongst the men's leaders, as he will be all day long. And Tony, we see a couple of leaders up here now, but what's really happening in this race?
The rest of the pack is beginning to shorten the lead. Actually, you know, for all the fast qualifying times all these runners need, they're not running very fast right now. The 5-mile split we just passed in 25 minutes and 28 seconds. That's over 5:05 per mile pace, which means they're running around 2:12, 2:13 time, and there's a whole slew of people that need sub-2:10s or sub-2:11s to make their qualifying times, which could mean they're trying to save themselves over the hills in the first 12 miles of this course. And then when they get to the second half, which is slightly downhill and flat, they can really let it all out because the weather is ideal. So it's just a matter of maybe they're looking for that, a second half of the marathon faster than the first half. Because the real favorites like John Treacy leading that second pack is now within about 10 seconds, I would say, of number 70 and number 31:26. Those are our 2 leaders. And right now, things are not going all that fast. Maybe that'll be picking up in the next few miles.
So Larry, what does that tell us? It tells us really that it's going to be something of a tactical race.
That's a good point, Barry, and early on it's turning into that. Big surprise for me if it does that, and I expected Martin Mondragon, whose goal, the Mexican men have a difficult challenge. The way it reads in Mexico, and the Mexican officials have told them this, and that's a Mexican runner up there in the lead, by the way, they have said that the 3 fastest times in our country coming up to a deadline of June this year will go to the Olympics representing us. The 3rd fastest time within the previous year is Andres Espinosa in New York, 2 hours and 10 minutes flat. So he knows he's got to run under 2:10, better than his course record here. And, you know, he in the past has really pushed pretty hard.
Yeah.
So it's going to be difficult to pick up the second half.
Any Mexican runner who does run under 2:10, and that, of course, is easier said than done, they say will make the Mexican Olympic team. Of course, it hasn't been done yet. Meanwhile, amongst the women, pack still very closely bunched, as you can see. The Soviet runners all up there as a group, and they have a lot of company right now, so it really looks like the women's race could be a highly competitive race, which, frankly, Larry, we expected.
This is the deepest field, as I mentioned. There are 14 women here who have times, lifetime bests, better than the 50 best last year performers all over the world. And in that field, and we'll pick her out for you in just a little bit, is Yegorova of the Soviet Union, who ranked number 9. By the way, these women are not personally very close, and for the last week they've been sequestered in a hotel here in Los Angeles and gone off for runs. And, you know, they come from different parts of the Soviet Union. There's tremendous competition to make the team, and there's been a lot of tension. They get along okay personally, but they don't socialize at all.
Well, there is a competition here, as we said, because these, for all intent, in fact, not for all intent, in reality, these are the Olympic trials for these women, so the top 3 finishers will make the Soviet or the Unified States Olympic team. So that is the way things stand right now for them, and I guess there is a little bit of not much love lost between them.
The woman in green from the Soviet Union that you see, her number is F10, as Madina Biktagarova is her name, with a white headband that she's got on, and F number 1, who is given that bib number because she's got the fastest time, a 2:28 marathoner, is Valentina Yegorova of the Soviet Union. I keep saying the Soviet Union. I may do that in the telecast. It's still undecided whether they will call themselves as a nation the Commonwealth of Independent States or the Unified Team.
All right, let's take you back to Little Tokyo right now. We were there a little bit earlier, and now let's go back to the corner of 6th and Figueroa and Brian Jenkins in Little Tokyo. Brian?
Actually, we're on the fringe of Little Tokyo here at 2nd and Spring to get a real feel for the wave of humanity out here. You got to get out of the cheap seats in the studio to come on down. We talked earlier in the show about this cultural mecca in Los Angeles. Is nowhere that we're apparently right here. We've got just about that. Carolina Sussex Spanish dancers, they put on a heck of a show just early.
We'll get back to Brian Jenkins back at 2nd and Spring. We had a couple of audio problems there. We will get you back. Meanwhile, you take a look at an aerial view of part of the course that these racers will get to. And it is just the everyday racers who are now coming by where Brian Jenkins was. The elite runners have well since passed there. They are on into their 6th mile now. And the race right now, with little to choose in both the men's and the women's race. The racing really hasn't started amongst the men. There is one point in the race, and we will talk to Tony Revis as this point gets nearer, that oftentimes decides the race, and that is that long stretch of sunset. They are getting a little bit closer to that.
They really are, Barry. And you can see him leaning. Now, the way he's running and the way he's leaning a bit, I can tell they're headed up one of the hills. The man in the back on the right, wearing the blue shorts, white top, John Treacy, Olympic silver medalist, right up in the hunt, so to speak, in the lead. And we're beginning to see some of these top people emerge right up in the very, very front of the race. There we're pushing back. You see number 12 on the bib number for the men's race.
That is Drish Daka, and we talked about him from Morocco. Kind of an interesting story. We'll talk a little bit more about him as we go along. You look at an aerial view of the Los Angeles Marathon. We are about 6 miles into the men's elite race. We're covering the women's race. The wheelchair racers are well underway, too. There is the men's race on the left of your screen. John Treacy has moved in front, and the pack continues to be bunched mostly amongst the Soviet runners in the women's race. So those are the 2 races that we're going to be watching, and the races, for all intent, Larry, really starting right now.
Right you are. You know, go back to my analogy of the mile earlier. It's as though the first lap of the mile run, 4 laps around your outdoor track, have been accomplished. John Treacy has forged up into the lead. And there you see behind him one of the runners for Nike International wearing bib number number 12. And that is Drish Daka, as you were saying before, who is from Morocco and takes the same pride that the Algerians and Moroccans have from the great Saïd Ouida. And his attitude coming into this race is, I'm going to run 2 hours and 10 minutes. They just have this fearlessness, and they're dedicated, hard trainers. So he'll be a factor. We haven't seen Mondragon. Maybe he's behind in that pack that's directly behind John Treacy.
Well, he had that one big run in the race that he won here in Los Angeles. He ran a race very similar to what's going on right now.
That's true. He actually emerged back, and by midway in the race was up in the lead pack. This is Mondragon, and pushed brilliantly after that. I might add here that the athletes are still going uphill. This section we're in right now is the toughest on the course, and it rises 160 feet of elevation in the 2 miles between mile 6 and reaching the mile 8 mark. John, just checking out where the competition is. He had a very disappointing year in 1991, and he had 3 marathons, running only respectably well in one and dropping out of another, and running poorly in New York for 9th place. And he said this is a year of redemption. And he's gone for the first time ever to altitude training, felt it really made him strong, and ran extremely well down in Florida at the Gasparilla Run, closing well and taking 2nd. And so this 34-year-old from Rhode Island with 4 children knows how to train and has been a superb runner over the years.
Well, I'll tell you how much attention Drish Daka got from the folks here in Los Angeles. On the official entry list, he was listed as Dasha Drish. So that'll give you an idea what they thought of his chances, but right now, call him what you will, he's right there.
Well, Dasha, for the last 2 months, has been at altitude training as well. And we had Albuquerque, New Mexico as the home for that stretch of time for John Treacy. And he trained with Aaron Ramirez and Ken Martin, 2 Americans that lived down there, and said it really helped his spirit a lot to have other world-class guys to train with. And Dasha was at Flagstaff, Arizona, at equally high elevation for the last 2 months, and has lived in the United States for the last year training.
So you see the time, 36:06. John Treacy now dictating the pace of this Los Angeles Marathon. And from Morocco, Dries Dasha running in second place. And there's probably, I would say, about 25 or 30 meters back to the rest of the pack, which, of course, is very much within striking range. This race just now getting started. Let's go out to Tony Revis, who is watching the race. And, Tony, what's going on behind these two?
Well, there's a big Mexican contingent, number 70 and number 3126, the 2 guys that were leading through the first 6 miles till they turned onto the hills of Sunset, have dropped back. Number 70, not so much so. He's about 30 meters back, but everyone else is more like 75 meters back. The people I see back there are a number of Mexicans. You can tell them by their bright green fluorescent uniforms. I can't tell who they are individually, but there's a whole bunch of them, and that's not surprising. And also up there, the big tall form of Peter Renner, the New Zealand favorite in essence in this race. The interesting thing is that John Treacy's the one guy that's already been selected for the Olympic team from Ireland. He doesn't need a fast time. He didn't have to win this race. He's just there to get his head right. He's never won a marathon in spite of his silver medal in LA 1984, 3 times, twice third in Boston, once third in New York City, last year second in Tokyo. So John's looking to put a victory under his belt in the marathon, and that's what he's looking for here today.
Tony, let me ask you,
sure.
if I can, is this the type of race that John Treacy runs? Is he a front runner?
You know, to be honest with you, against Larry said, second to Gasparilla against a field that was 30 people deep, and those were people who were not marathon training. That's how strong John Treacy is. He could be the best athlete out here today, and he could run away with the field.
So right now it is those two and the rest of the pack, Larry. Again, sometimes the camera angles can be a little bit deceiving, but it looks as though the rest of the field might start to be making a run at him. Here's a look at John Treacy. As Tony Revis told us, 34 years old, he's from Ireland, silver medal in the 1984 Olympic Games, and look at that time, 2:09:56. Right now he is absolutely fit and absolutely ready, and he looks at Larry so far.
Well, he's run very, very well. Here you see some of the women from the Commonwealth of Independent States, formerly the Soviet Union, as our picture temporarily is dulled there. There you see the lead, as Tony said, 75 yards back. The person in the green shorts in the back to the left of the Mercedes back there is Martine Mondragon. Also behind Mondragon, I saw Peter Renner from New Zealand. So 2 of the top favorites who have run very well in races coming into this, have prepared solely for this race, are up in the lead and within striking distance of Treacy and Dasha.
You know, Tony mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there is a dearth of American runners amongst the men and amongst the women, and the reasons for that, of course, is the American men's Olympic marathon trials are upcoming in April, on the 11th of April, I believe it is, and the women just had their trials, so there are actually only 2 American women running in this race amongst the elite runners, and just about that same number amongst the men, and that is the reason for it. For the Mexican men, however, this is very important, and for the Commonwealth of Independent States runners, formerly the Soviet, it is extremely important because 3 of them will make their Olympic team.
The country itself, and we'll touch on this later, the former Soviet Union, now the Commonwealth of Independent States, suffering mightily as they shift to a free enterprise system because prices have soared, in some cases, Barry, up to 15 times over where they were just 9 months ago. And so the money that they could earn here is tremendously valuable to them and their extended families of in-laws.
Many of them, of course, have left families. Valentina Igorova, to name one, left her family back home, came to Gainesville, Florida, so a lot of hardships over and above just training hardships.
We're coming up to mile 8, which is Sunset and Innis to Sunset Boulevard in Alvarado by mile 9, and the hills have left and the gentleness of the slope downhill. Notice behind them, they're coming down a gradual decline, and that will continue now as the accent really is going down.
They're also really coming into an area where there's a lot of crowd. You can look at the crowd along the sidewalk here, 4 or 5 people deep. Very encouraging to runners, and very encouraging to runners like the man running in second place right now, Dries Dasha, as they are encouraging him. A lot of applause, a lot of yelling, and I'm sure there's a lot of applause and a lot of yelling going on in a lot of languages. This is where the race really could be won or lost. It has been in the past at the start of mile 8, actually getting into mile 10, mile 11. This is a long stretch of very gradual uphill, and there have been times in marathons past here in Los Angeles where someone has tried to break out of the pack and steal the race.
This is a great relief. Some people consider themselves hill runners. Treacy is tough. You asked earlier, Tony, if you thought that this was a surprise for him, for Treacy. It is a bit for me. He is one that is willing to push the pace, but in the past I've watched him stay with the pack until later in the race, more often than not, than surge away and try and break the will of the competition behind him. So I'm a little surprised at the loneliness of the long-distance runner approach that he has chosen in this race.
So that's the way the men's race sizes up right at the moment, and the Mexican contingent in a very large pack continues to be what looks to be 50 meters perhaps, maybe 50 yards. It looks as though they might be catching up, but again, camera angles sometimes give you a different impression. There is the leaderboard right now with Treacy in front. He has just about a second on Dries, that is, and then Contreras back another 13 seconds with Felix Bolas of Guatemala back in 4th place. So the race, for all intent, as we said, really coming into the point now where it gets to be critical, and that is the start of a long and gradual uphill at sunset. That's the way the men's race looks. We will keep you up to date on the women, and of course also on the walking race and the wheelchair race, which is winding down. And there is our man from Jersey, Tim McLuhan, running his first race. How are your bunions doing, Tim?
Well, I'm here with my posse, and this is nothing short of wild. I've nearly been knocked on my butt about 20 times. About a mile back, the runners were so dense in here, you could barely move. Oh, John! I think I'm engaged to 3 or 4 of the other runners. We were running so close together. Took us about 10 minutes to get past the first mile mark. And I figure if I run sub 4-minute miles from here, I can still win the race. We're heading up some hills now. It's going to get a little tough here. But I got my bodyguard, so I think we're okay.
We mentioned that Tim McLuhan running in his first race in California, first marathon in California. What's that? Is that a cappuccino in his hand? What is that?
Let's just hope it's just cappuccino.
Meanwhile, here is Martin Mondragon. Now, he is running in 3rd place right now. He looks very comfortable. It also looks like he's pushing the pace a little bit here.
Well, you know, I'm sure he's got his radar up to gauge, first off, how he feels at this juncture of the race, and secondly, what is the lead that's out there. And even a third thing for him, very important to keep an eye on what his splits are and monitor to try and get under 2 hours and 10 minutes. His course record that he established here in 1988 of 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 19 seconds was a shock to everybody. On that year's depth chart for the Mexican contingent that came up to run and try and qualify for the Olympics, he wasn't even in the top 10. Former soccer player who didn't start running until his 30s, Barry, and at age 35 shocked everybody with a brilliant performance that day. And he loves this course. He could have chosen a cooler climate to run in, such as London, to qualify for this, but he chose Los Angeles.
Brilliant performance the last time he won, and a huge kick at the end. Meanwhile, John Treacy on the lead with Dries Dasha of Morocco in 2nd place, and Dasha continuing to keep contact with Treacy as they continue to head up this long stretch of hill on Sunset Boulevard. It is about a 5-mile stretch of hill, actually. Mondragon still not in your picture. Tony Revis is out there amongst the leaders, and Tony, if you can hear me, let me just ask you what the difference is now between 2nd place and 3rd place.
You know, Barry, it's well over 100 yards. Well over 100 yards. Well over 30 seconds in time. One of the problems that happens, I think, for Mondragon is you can see all the automobiles. I guess one of the questions is, how many pictures will Bill Burke be in through the course of the race? And I'd say all of them. Bill's got that car positioned exactly where they'd want him to have it positioned, right in our shot. But it does, and then sometimes that white van will get in the way. There's some other cars that block Mondragon's view. I think he could probably see the big Mercedes-Benz press truck, but he's got a ways to go. And one of his problems may well be that not running with a pack and with only one other runner between him and John Treacy, there's in a sense no ladder to climb. He's got these 2 guys to chase, and that's it. There's no intermediate steps to chase, and the larger that lead is, the more difficult that gap is to bridge.
I think he not only wants to see that Mercedes, he'd like to have that Mercedes.
This is a courageous and smart move on Mondragon's part, in my opinion. And I think he'll be okay between the break that he made, knowing how he probably felt. It's still relatively early in the race, but he is focused on the backs of these 2 men. And with every quarter of a mile, he is gauging how much closer am I. And that will inspire him, I think, to get up to these men.
And you see the crowd again cheering these men on as they come up to the crest of the hill. Treacy took a long look back. He looked right by Dasha, as you can see, and looked at Mondragon. Meanwhile, the women's race, and the women's race continues to be very close amongst the Commonwealth of Independent States, and right now you are looking at Elena Petrokova of Czechoslovakia, who has moved into contention. Alongside her, Lizanne Bouzer of Canada. And let's pick up who else is up there. That is also Marcia Narlock of Brazil, so it is not exclusively the domain of the former Soviet athletes right now?
I think, Barry, to take a guess that we may be looking at the second pack of women who are fairly close to the leaders and keeping them within, certainly, I think, the naked eye to see what's going on. But we're seeing more of this in women's running. As we get better quality women who have been at the sport longer, they tend to run more in packs, and the races are more competitive compared to marathons of 5 or 6 years ago. But there you see, those three women have been the national record holder of both Czechoslovakia, who is number F, right there on your screen, F5, which is Alena Petakova, and also the national champion in the past in the marathon distance in the orange shorts from Brazil in Narlock.
And the leader, as we saw a little bit earlier, continues to be Madina Biktagarova of Belarus, and she is running up there with what she hopes will be her Olympic teammates, and that would be Valentina Yegorova, who was also up there a little bit earlier, and so too was Ramilia Burangulova. So those are the leaders. You're looking here at the second pack. The gap between them we will check on. To tell you the truth, it is hard to tell from this angle. We don't really know how much it is between these two.
Sun coming out, temperature in the upper 60s, under 2 hours, 30 minutes pace so far, Barry.
This is the Los Angeles Marathon, just about at the halfway point for the men. More to come, so don't go away. We talked earlier about a race within a race. Well, one of the races within a race, and a very important one, is the wheelchair competition, and it continues now. And that looks to be Jim Knopp, who is out there all by his lonesome.
Do you believe this? Look at this. I tell you, first of all, he stops for a little handshake and high five. Totally comfortable. What an athlete. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, if you joined our telecast late, 1976 was in the U.S. Olympic trials, a 17-foot, 7-inch pole vaulter who had a back injury and was unable to compete anymore, took up wheelchair competition and primarily track and field and now road racing, and has been perhaps the world's most consistent marathoner in the 80s.
And look at the time for Jim Knopp, and that was sub 140, a tremendous time. It was 130 something, I couldn't see. Now you see 133.54. That is sensational.
Well, he's $6,200 richer right now, and the question is how many others will get under Shell's offer that they had of cracking the 1 hour 39-minute barrier.
That is just a tremendous race for that man. Jim Knopp, 133 and change. Reason to be a happy man, and he's going to have to get a bigger wallet as well. Meanwhile, here is the women's leader, and the women's leader continues to be Madina Biktagarova, although now, according to our leaderboard, we have Yegorova in front. They are very close. Yegorova, Biktagarova, and Burangulova. That's the three leaders in the women's competition, but they are very tightly packed.
Well said, Barry. Well said. 10 miles. The women are averaging better than 5 minutes and 45 seconds per mile. Remember, they came through the most difficult part of the course. They're on pace here for an excellent time. And, Catherine, can you hear us out there?
Yes, I sure can, Larry.
What are your thoughts out there? Can you see the second pack at all yet?
Yes, we gave you a report on the second pack, but I'll update you on that. First of all, as the sun is coming out, there are two things that are heating up this race. Madina is really heating it up right here because she is really controlling the lead pack now, Larry. There's no doubt about it. Valentina Yegorova is sweating a lot already in the race, and I think that early pace really took its toll. The second thing that's heating up the race is that only about 125 yards behind these women, also running a course record pace, are some of those favorites we were talking about. Elena Petrikova, Lise Ambousier running together, Marcia Narlock from Brazil off to the side, and even hanging in there, Tatiana Zuvieva. Now, if I'm going to make my choice in something like this, I think you're going to have to watch out a lot for Marcia Narlock. You saw her back there in the orange shorts from Brazil. She said, I'm going to run the first half of this race in 1:15 no matter what, because this is a come-from-behind race. Last year, she was in 7th and finished in 2nd doing just that. Back to you guys.
Catherine, can you tell if that second pack of women, they have closed down on these leaders, these three?
They're getting closer all the time, Larry. I would guess it's about 125 yards now.
So we'll keep an eye on that. That is the women's race, and right at the moment, at least, that looks like the race of the day.
These women, it's very interesting what the Commonwealth of Independent States, formerly the Soviet Union, did before. We'll tell you about it later in the race, of how they engineered all their training throughout the Soviet Union.
Meanwhile, we are back and looking at an aerial shot of this Los Angeles Marathon. Weather conditions continue to be just about perfect. Here is the women's race again, and it's just about the same as it was when we went away. And the leader continues to be Madina Biktagarova of Belarus, And alongside her, Madina Biktagarova. Kicked it. First time I've done that today, though. And she is of Russia. That is the state of Russia. And it is a whole new look to what was once the Soviet Union.
Right you are. And here's a map of the Soviet Union, an extraordinary place in landmass. The very left-hand edge is within 275 miles of the soil of Germany if you were flying for New York. The right-hand corner actually is just within miles of Alaska, to give you an idea. 10 time zones it spans, and I've had one expert say that it may actually go to 12 time zones for the change. Where you see the big dot that I've made up here, that is Moscow. And these women come from Belarusia, as we've told, Biktagarova, which is over here. Most of them surround Moscow, give or take 1,000 miles. Kiev is another home of Yegorova. The dots I have down here in the bottom part, right here and right over here, are the two training camps that the Soviets have used for their distance athletes. And it's noticed in the southern part of the country. And they travel there 8 to 10 times a year, and they train up to 1 month at a time and then go back home to their children. And then both of them have a child and are married, and go back for 1 week, Barry, and then they have to go back to the training camps. The Soviets have done this with these athletes now for the last 8 years, and now the Commonwealth of Independent States doesn't have the funds to do that, and they are here training and have been sponsored over here by the winner this past year of the London Marathon, and a Soviet athlete who fronted them the money, really, to try and compete in Los Angeles to get a head start now in the new free enterprise system that's existing in the Commonwealth of Independent States.
And you could see the three of them exactly dead on the same time after 12 miles, so the race is going to be decided, at least for the moment, between those three. But remember what Catherine Switzer told us, there is a big pack that is looming up with some of the favorites in this women's race. So let me get it straight now, Larry. To get to Gainesville, Florida, you go from Moldavia, you turn left at Belarusia, go back on through White Russia, and then down to Kurdistan. Is that it?
You know, an interesting story about that. The Federation over there did not book the airlines in time for some changes of some price tickets for them to fly out of the country on Aeroflot. When they went back to rebook, the price of a ticket for them to fly out of the country had gone from 7,000 rubles round trip to the United States to 96,000 rubles. And they wound up going to Finnair and saying, please help us. And that's when Volstikov fronted the money to them. And they got the money to come to the United States through Finnair, having to use his funds and resources to do that. And the women, of course, are very indebted here and hope from their winnings here to get a new start and a new lease on life for their families.
They ought to be indebted. Have you ever flown on Aeroflot?
I have read stories about it. I have never flown on it.
Ooh, I'm telling you, it's very nice. May I have a cup of coffee? Yet! Meanwhile, take a look at the men's leaders. John Treacy now has been joined. Coming up on his shoulder is Dries Dasha of Morocco, who is running a very steady race.
You know, it's good when you're up in the lead like that to share the load with somebody else. I think for Treacy's benefit, he's probably happy to have someone up here, at least at this stage of the race, and not be totally alone. You can draw on a strength. If you've ever gone jogging with someone, I think it's easier with somebody else who's a friend than it is alone. And the same principle holds true when you're running at 5 minutes a mile out there. Notice the shadows. The sun's coming out. Something not expected here. There's Treacy's time. He told me before the race he wanted to go by the 13.1 mile mark in 64.5 minutes, and he's almost exactly on pace, Barry.
Just about right on it. And again, Martin Mondragon of Mexico continues in third place, and Dasha pushing him, and that I would think has to bode very well for Treacy, as you said.
I can't tell our viewers what confidence the Algerians and particularly the Moroccans have with the advent in the 80s of a man named Saïd Ouida. I consider him the greatest distance runner in history, the man I've never seen anybody equal what he can do from the half mile or the 800 meters all the way up to 10,000. And he has inspired all his countrymen to realize that they could be great runners. Most of them have relatively slight builds. It's not that they're real tall and heavy. And he's a perfect example. And they are all very mentally tough. And he said, I can do that. And they believe they can run 2:10 even on this course.
Well, I think Renee Hambley, who's out at the mile 13 mark, started out this morning with a sou'wester and an umbrella. And right now, Renee, the sun's shining. Ain't this great?
It is great. It's beautiful. It's turned out to be a beautiful day. We were worried about rain, but we didn't need to. We have lots of celebration. Mile 13 is the place to be. We've got a live rock and roll band. You were talking about how inspiring all of the runners, the Argentina runners were. All of them are just inspiring. And when the wheelchair runners runners went by. It's really been something. This is my first marathon. It's been very exciting for me. But besides the marathon, we have something very big going on here, and that's called the Marathon of Marriage. We have a couple that is on the route right now, running to mile 13. They're going to get married, and we're going to bring you the wedding. Now, this morning, they arrived with their entire wedding party and minister by limo, and I think we have some videotape of it. I want to show that to you. All right, so they arrived by limo, and oh, aren't they a beautiful kisses? That's a good sign for a marriage that's supposed to happen pretty soon. I guess they haven't changed their mind. Isn't she beautiful? Now, we're going to be bringing you that wedding in a little bit. We've got a beautiful wedding set. You got to see the cake. It's going to be beautiful. But you know what? The whole story of how they met kind of ties in with the marathon, and I'd like to show you just how romantic their story is. Please watch this. This is the story of Peter and Lauren. They met at the 1990 Los Angeles Marathon and fell in love. At this year's marathon, they're getting married.
We both run the LA Marathon, and I was seated at a chair and enjoying myself, feeling good, and up came the most beautiful, athletic, wonderful person in the entire world, and she started talking to me.
There was this guy sitting at the table, and so I just moseyed up, and I was in a great mood having finished my first marathon, and so we just started chatting, and I didn't really know what this guy's story was, though. He had this T-shirt on, and I read it, and it said, "Marriage, the sole cause of divorce." But the more we talked, the more, I realized that Peter seemed like such a neat guy, and these kind of things happen when you least expect it, and that was definitely a day I least expected it. We were out for a run one morning in Carmel, and Peter was going on and on about how warm he was. Finally, he persuaded me to unzip his sweatshirt so he could take that off. It turns out that he has his LA Marathon number on from when we first met. So I flipped up the number instinctually because that's where I wrote my name and address, and on the back it said, "Will you marry me?"
We are just past the halfway point of the men's elite race. The women's race continues to be an outstanding effort, and you're looking at second place right now, as that is Dasha, who is running well behind John Treacy, as you can see. And Tony Revis, it looks like Treacy has taken this race for himself.
All right, Johnny. Sunset Hills, and then when they got on the Hollywood Boulevard and it flattened out, Dasha came on and attached, and they just ran a rhythm. Actually, they were running around 4:54 per mile all the way down Hollywood Boulevard. Now they're on Rossmore, in a very Tony area of town, obviously. And John Treacy takes periodic looks around. He opened it up at around 14 3/4 miles, just as they were on Vine, passing Lexington just before Melrose. And he ran a 4:50 mile between 14 and 15. And as we were looking at the wedding setup, he was breaking the relationship he had with Daca off, and he's on his own. And it looks real good. I asked him one time, "Are we in your way, John?" And he gave us just, "No, I'm fine. Hang where you are. We're just doing all right." And in the third place, when they were turning off of Hollywood Boulevard, Martine Mondragon had gotten as close as within 20 seconds of the lead. But now with that 4:50 mile that Treacy put on Dasha, it's opened up more than a 35-second lead on third place as well. So at this point, boom, 16 miles, 1:19.19. And so, geez, that's another sub 4:50 mile by John Treacy. Larry, the only thing that can stop you right now is himself. A couple of sub 4:50 mile and then a sub 4:50 mile. What do you think?
Tony, that's well put. I mean, I don't know what's going to crack him up except, as you say, himself. Mondragon, we still can't see back there, and I don't know whether he's going to be able to make any kind of a race of it with the move that John put on.
Yeah, I agree. Again, he was sort of moving his way up very gradually, very nicely, but it's like John reinfused some pace into the race around that 14.5 mile mark. I don't know why specifically. If he keeps going like this all over the end, we can certainly ask him.
Tony, I wonder if he looked back and saw Mondragon closing and closing on him and figured, you know, let's break this guy's will right now.
Yeah, maybe, but I think just like Mondragon might have been having trouble seeing where Treacy and Dacha was because of the cars, it's the same thing for Treacy. They have to take a very protracted look around to be able to see. You know how it is when you're looking and you're racing. You can't even look down at your watch and really understand what the clock says. So I think he might have, even if he didn't see him, he might have felt some presence or gotten nervous. That might be a good point.
You know, Treacy, I think, expected a cool day today. I wonder if the sun does come out over the second half, if it might have been a little brave for him with still so many miles to go in this race to have made the move he did. We'll see.
Yeah, the sun is now back behind the clouds. And even when the sun was out, it was a pale sun. It was behind some clouds, so it was filtered out. And I'm in a turtleneck sweater and a nylon anorak, and I'm not warm at all. I'm still a little bit cool, so the air temperature out here remains very ideal.
All right, so perfect conditions right now, and right now this man, John Treacy, is running what appears to be the perfect race. He takes a look back again, and I'm sure if he looked back over that shoulder, he didn't see anybody. Meanwhile, a women's race, and this one is just that, a race. You can see how close it is. Those are the three leaders who have been there virtually the entire route, Biktagarova, Biktagarova, and Burangulova. And again, they are virtually dead even. And let's try to look back down the course and see how close that second pack is, and I don't see him, Larry.
Barry, right now, these three women are total allies in this race. They're not concerned about the money at the end, which is extremely important to them. I was over in the Soviet Union a year and a half ago, and after I finished my meal, a waiter said, "Do you want some more money? Come over here and see me." I went over, and he gave me 7 times my American dollar for rubles. So you can imagine what they can exchange their dollars for, how important the race is to these people. But all they want to do is help each other to get within 4 miles of the finish line, then they'll race for the dollars.
Soviet immigration just walked in the door. Catherine, meanwhile, how does this race look? And more specifically, the race obviously is between these three, but specifically, what is going on behind these three?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I think that Biktagarova and Biktagarova are exchanging the lead and working on the pace a little bit together. But Biktagarova, in the green's face and expression, is much more lively. She's waving to the crowd. She's having a good time. But Biktagarova is really having to grimace and struggle. Now, that could just be the way that she runs. But the smartest person in the three of right here is Ramilia Burangulova, because she's just tucked in there and running very, very calmly. Now, to answer your question about what's happening in the back, I think those women are back about 125 to 150 yards still. They don't seem to be moving up as fast as I thought they would. But after this report, I'm going to drop back and give you an update on those women.
All right, thanks very much, Catherine. We'll check back with Catherine Switzer as she heads back to the second echelon of runners. But these are the three that have had the lead, and it looks as though the race will be decided, at least for the moment, amongst these three. We spoke to you earlier about the fact that Tim McLuhan is a guy from the East Coast running out here in a marathon in Los Angeles for the first time. And Tim, I think it's kind of interesting. East Coast, but everybody wears chinos and leathers and that kind of thing. Out here, you got to worry about an overdose of spandex. What's going on for you, Tim?
We're out at the 8-mile mark, more or less. I'll tell you what, the crowds are just as enthusiastic, but the hills kind of beat the heck out of the rest of us. It's got a little more quiet in the field. A little ways back, we went through Chinatown, and I took Chinese in graduate school, so ni hao ma, woman do hao. Pretty good. Wo shou chun go ha. We bought some egg rolls. How about it, guys?
High carbo load. That's very good for you. I think what that meant is take one from column A, wasn't it? Meanwhile, John Treacy out on the pace, and I mean he's out on the pace all by himself. Tim looks pretty good, though. He's running pretty well.
Was that a contrast of what goes on in the Los Angeles Marathon? The smiles and all teeth we saw to the severity of John's expression here epitomizes every emotion in between is out there going on in the course now. You see the graphic, 16 miles. He is running at about a 4-minute, 56-second mile pace, John Treacy is.
And that is the scoreboard so far, the leaderboard, I should say, brought to you by Cathay Pacific Airways. That's after 16 miles. Treacy now 5 seconds between him and Dries Dasha, and Mondragon a distant third right now. This is not only the man of the moment, he may be the man of the day.
I'm here with the wedding party. I've just informed them that as a former race director, I am empowered to marry them. It's kind of like the captain of the ship. But I also can give you some pre-Cana counseling if you want to think this thing over.
We only have 4 miles.
You got 4 miles left to change your mind, Peter Howell. This is your last chance.
I have my wedding party keeping a close tab on him.
Well, and if I were you, I'd dump this guy. There's plenty of other men here to choose from. You got 19,000 other people to choose from. This is your last chance.
No, this is it.
Going to the chapel, going to get married, going to the chapel.
Tim McClune with the wedding party, and they've got another few miles before we get to the wedding. What kind of sweatband do you wear with a tuxedo?
I don't know, but that was great. I enjoyed that a lot.
Meanwhile, on the women's lead, you can see it is as it has been, and that is Madina Biktagarova along with Ramilia Burangulova and also Valentina Yegorova. Burangulova, incidentally, very interesting story, though.
Barry, she started out, was not a runner at a younger age, and at the age of 20, somebody said, why don't you enter this competition? In the Soviet Union, from the age of 7 all the way up into the 20s, they have a national championship. You're not going to believe this. The title of it is Ready to Defend My Native Country, and it includes 4 different things that you do, actually 5, swimming, running 1,000 meters, running 100 meters, and throwing a grenade and firing a rifle. I mean, you know, what can you say about that? In any event, she came in the top 10 in the Soviet Union, took up running, and here she is right now, maybe representing her country in Barcelona as part of the Commonwealth of Independent States.
It's a good thing they disassembled the grenade team, isn't it?
Well, how about the rifle? You're not going to get very far in the Olympics with one of those things.
Except, of course, in the Winter Olympics. Valentina Yegorova continues to run up close with the leader, as she has for the better part of this race, Madina Biktagarova. So it's Biktagarova, Yegorova, and then Burangulova back in 3rd place. And I'll tell you, she looks very strong in the front end.
I mean, that's amazing to sit there at this point in the race and be able to smile and look around. One of the people, for you folks at home, when you're watching a marathon and you want to study fatigue in people's faces, watch where the athletes are looking. Are they looking left or right? Are they staring down at the road? And it's a good indication of where their head is. And here you see some of the 20,000 stories that everybody will have for work the next day as to how they fared in the 7th Los Angeles Marathon.
And that is the halfway point of this marathon. That is mile 13. That's where Renee Hambley awaits the wedding party. And there's Elvis is alive. You know, I knew it.
Treat me like a fool.
Never mind, we won't do any more of that.
That's very good.
There's parades for royalty and there's ones for winning the World Series, but all these people can go home and say, I ran against an Olympic silver medalist. And you can't say that you played baseball against Reggie Jackson, you know, or any one of the major league pitchers that you want to try and step to the plate against. But you can step to the starting line and say, I get in with the world's best in some particular sport.
And you can see the students run LA, and we're going to talk a little bit more about them. They've been running with Tim McClune. Meanwhile, here's a guy who was running all by his lonesome and loving every minute of it.
A race for redemption. The interesting part of this, close to Barcelona, he did not have to run this race. He had qualified for the Olympics earlier, but had not been running well. And a sign of his intensity is to leave his 4 kids, and he's a very strong family man, go away for a month and train at Albuquerque, go home for the Christmas holidays, go back to Albuquerque for a month, and come here. And he said, I'm ready, and I'm ready to try and win in the Olympics, and that's my goal here. I want to prove myself on a warm day.
A familiar theme, train at Albuquerque, which of course is at altitude. We talked earlier about
Right.
the Mexican runners training in Mexico City, which is at altitude. Some runners training in Flagstaff, Arizona, which is at altitude. And this just seems to be not only the sign of things to come, but what's here right now.
Right, you are, Barry, and he's really making a shambles of it, as Madina Biktagarova in green has forced the pace and controlled the lead group of 3 women here, all from the Commonwealth of Independent States, formerly the Soviet Union, in their quest to represent their country in Barcelona.
Yeah, she's not only controlling the pace, she looks like she's pushing the pace. And the game plan of Marcia Narlock, who was in the 2nd pack, who we have only seen once, remember, was to run 1:15 halfway. 1:15 halfway right at the moment doesn't look like it's going to be enough.
No, that's very true. These women are running at a pace that is around 2 hours, 28 minutes to 29 minutes for the marathon. Superb world-class time, may rank possibly amongst the 1 or 2 fastest times in the world thus far this year.
And we talked earlier that this is the Olympic trials for the Independent States team that will compete in Barcelona in July. So right now, if things were to end as they look at the moment, it will be these 3 who will compose the marathon team for the Independent States.
Look at behind. That's a great shot down the road. You can't see anybody back there. I'm very surprised that there are not a cluster of men running around these women. There usually is throughout the whole body of the race, and it's helpful to have other people around you, but I'm surprised we don't see anybody in the picture. I don't ever remember seeing that with a lead pack of women.
And you see that Mercedes back there? That is a prize that will go to the winning woman, too. And the one thing that I have to wonder is, where do you sell a Zill in Los Angeles?
$180,000 in cash prizes or Mercedes-Benz that will be given out to the male and female winners.
A Zill, of course, is a Russian car. I should explain that, right?
What? I missed that one myself.
Passing mile 17. Meanwhile, back in Chinatown, Artie Ojeda is amongst the masses, and I'm sure it is the masses. Artie, you got it.
Thank you very much, Barry. If the runners, as they pass through Chinatown, were looking for an extra source of inspiration, well, the good people here, they are here to inspire. Chinatown has rolled out the red carpet, a very colorful red carpet and cultural red carpet, as you see, and it started this morning with a very loud wake-up call. They set off 100,000 firecrackers, sounded out loud and clear. That was about the time the starter's pistol went off back at the start line. I tell you what, if anybody was asleep near Chinatown at that time, they were wide awake after that. Back here, as you can see behind me, most of the runners, in fact, all of the runners have passed through the heart of Chinatown's business district. What we have now are basically the walkers as they make their way through mile 6. That's the story from Chinatown. Barry, back to you.
All right, thanks, Artie. I think the guy with the firecrackers was in the room next door to me last night. Meanwhile, John Treacy continues to have things all his own way. He is the leader, and he is the leader big time, and it just doesn't appear that anybody is going to be able to make a run at John Treacy. More to come in the Los Angeles Marathon. 7th time they've won this race, and Treacy took the lead right where everybody who has won the race in the past did. They went up Sunset Boulevard. It's downhill from here.
Somebody told me that his name was Bill. Let it run, 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 let it run, run. Yes, the heart stood still. Yes.
City of Los Angeles Marathon. This is the 7th renewal. John Treacy, it appears, has the race to himself so far as the men are concerned. Jim Knopp is the winner of the wheelchair race. We still have a 5K race going on. The walkers are still going on, but here is the woman of the moment, and she is, as she has been since the outset, Madina Biktagarova of Belarusia, as she continues to lead the women's race. She does, however, have some company up front, and that can't be said about any of the other races that we've had.
Well, that's true, and although, look, let's see where this camera pulls back. Has she broken away from the others? She has. It looks like this is Biktagirova's race to run. Obviously, our graphic will correct and fix there. After 19 miles, she has been out there, and she has got the field in tow. The women runners have been doing a tremendous job out there. Treacy is running on a par in a men's race for what she is accomplishing in women's. The comparable world-class times are on a very equivalent par basis. She also, and Barry, we commented on this, Tony did too in his men's race, just how she was looking around and looking fresh. Catherine cited exactly how good she looked, and it's come to bear. Sometimes the one staring at the road still has something left. In this case, she's dominated and burst away from the field here and has about 40 minutes left in the race.
Yeah, I remember Tony Revis saying behind his leader, John Treacy, there was nothing but pavement, and now you can make that statement about Biktagarova. She is just running away and hiding from the field after 19 miles.
Luis Pozo is a very respected agent for the athletes and has had many of them living down in Florida with him and giving them opportunities to train in the Tampa area. And the dope that other people had, some of their coaches, was that Yegarova was in better shape than Biktagarova, or also Burangurova was expected to do this. She was not expected to make their team. And look at how she is dominating here. Looks terrific, too.
She really does. Looks very strong right now. And she has just distanced the field. Wow. It still looks strong. It doesn't look like she's laboring in the slightest. And you know, the other thing, too, just as an observer, it looks like she's really having a good time out here. She is playing off the crowd, using the crowd.
Very hard to do at this latter stage of the race at a time which is fairly close to the course record of 2 hours and 29 minutes. And here she is looking, just moving the hair off her face, looking around left and right. Very powerful leg action for this late in the marathon. She looks terrific. Just terrific.
Seems to have a sense of humor, and you really have to when you wear a headband that says Washington State Potato Head. Meanwhile, that is Tim McClune on the right. I don't think Tim's going to win this race, but Tim, you still got a lot of company. You had the hors d'oeuvre. Did they invite you to the wedding at least?
Yeah, I'll be at the wedding for sure. I don't know if my band's going to play. Actually, whose dopey idea was this, me running in this race? We're past 12 miles now, and I'll tell you, the weather's beginning to play games. It's very, very humid, and I am getting tired. However, every once in a while, you might run into somebody on the course. Actually, I have no questions, but I just thought I'd say hello.
What'd you do, trip the high school kids? That's Tim McClune with some company.
Oh, jeez.
John Treacy has no company. I suppose you'd rather be where Tim was?
I think he'd probably smile a little bit more if he was surrounded by the youth of Los Angeles there that he had. I think that Students for LA to run this race is a terrific organization. It really is.
Tony Revis, you were following John Treacy. Do you see anybody but John Treacy?
No, I don't, but we got a significant change in the attitude of this race. John Treacy, just as we passed over the Santa Monica Freeway, grabbed his right hamstring, went down and grabbed his last hamstring. His last mile was 5 minutes and 16 seconds, and that came off of a four miles before that, all over 5 minutes a mile. He could have been playing his cards very, close to his vest, but the point was that his legs are starting to tight up, and that right hamstring is starting to go on him. He's starting to drag that right leg around with him, and his hand's stuck down there. Now, Dacia is a long way off behind him. I see 30 seconds, but I see more than that in my picture. But the last 3 miles are going to be a torture test, I think, for John Treacy. He's had it all by himself. But the marathon, as many people have said before, the distance itself is your #1 competitor, not your other running friends. And right now, the marathon seems to be testing John Treacy more than the other athletes.
Well, and I think, too, anybody who's ever been associated with this race would harken back at this point, Tony, to get him as Shahanga. He is running a very similar race to what John Treacy is to what Shahanga did.
Absolutely. And the last 3 miles, again, are that slight uphill. And it just drains all your momentum. And if you got a bad leg or a bad muscle and something that's starting to cramp, when a muscle starts to cramp, well, you're completely at its beck and call. You have it's like you're not in control of that part of your body. So if you push it just a little too far, it's going to start cramping up on you. So John's going to start trying to, now it's all about trying to win the race. Time means absolutely nothing, and he's just going to try to play it as close to the edge without going over and cramping that muscle as he can, and he's going to constantly be turning around to see how much of a lead he can maintain from this point forward.
Tony, interesting point. You mentioned 5 minutes and 16 seconds and the real measurable slowdown here as you're taking a look right now at some of the athletes in second place. But that was a downhill mile for Treacy, and it probably gives a little hope to some of these other people. There you're looking at Josildo Rocha, who was the past winner last year of the Chicago Marathon. And he and his training partner, Jose Santana from Brazil, felt that they would have a shot to win up there in the lead pack.
Well, Larry, right now, I'm not sure what he sees. I mean, I don't know. John takes a look around. He's probably hearing what I'm saying. But we're coming up on mile 23 right now. And I guess I see a motorcycle way back there, but it must be four city blocks, at least 4 city blocks behind. But again, this last stretch all the way home 3 miles is a dead straight shot. And in the past, Art Boileau, a 2-time champion who's somewhere back there, has made the run at Shahanga as he did just a few years back. So it definitely is possible, and we've seen it before, and that's just the nature of this LA Marathon course.
What is Rocha's history, Tony? Does he have a history of being able to finish well?
Yeah, Rocha has. He was, from what people tell me, well, Larry, you were in Chicago. He was a total cruise job, as I understand it.
Right. I did the commentary for that. He and Santana said before the race, we're just going to go out and break it open. Nobody believed them. Brazil is an up-and-coming marathon nation, and, of course, Mexico's gotten more powerful, too. And what the two of them did is in tandem, they went out and broke the race open in the first 7 miles, and they just ran as a twosome, and they ran away from everybody. He faded in the last mile or two, but they've run more conservatively in this race. We'll see what harkens for them.
Larry, the last mile, the 23rd mile, was a 5:10 for John Treacy. So it went from a 5:16 back to a 5:10, which means he's probably, in other words, he's not going to try to do any more fast stuff. It's just like you play that edge, don't you?
You do, and you know one luxury he has here, and Treacy's experienced enough that if he feels badly, he can cut back even to a 5:25 or 5:30, rest, conserve himself if the leg is strained. You know that story, Tony.
But you know that Rocha is going to start smelling blood, isn't it? He's going to start smelling blood in the water, and once that happens, then he gets infused with his adrenal shot, and then Treacy's just can be dead meat in the water.
Treacy's struggling a lot, watching his form here, more than normal. The stride is shortened down.
Yeah.
The heel kick is not coming up. Look at the difference in the power between the two. That's a good camera shot we just had. This guy's form, when we had a side shot of him, was excellent. I was noting it. I didn't say anything at the time, but he is full of run. He's running well, and he might get provided some inspiration up here. You're right, if he does see him slow down.
Got a long way to go. Long way.
Up in front of him, of course, there could be a factor because he may not know that Treacy is coming back to him.
But you monitor him. You watch his back all the time. There's somebody who's nobody's back is going to catch. Look at the speed of the leg turnover, everybody. Wow, is she powering along. She is amazing.
Mile 23 now, as you saw the men go by that a little bit earlier. John Treacy actually now probably well into his 24th mile. And there is second place right now. That is Rocha of Brazil. And Tony Revis, of course, is following the leaders. Tony, can you see Rocha yet?
Yeah, I sure can, Barry. He's got a distance to go. And again, he's got 3 cars that are between him and Treacy. Now, when Treacy tries to turn on, he sees automobiles. When Rocha tries to see how far ahead of those cars Treacy is, he can't see them. So it plays to both of their advantages in some sense, because Treacy, he doesn't want to be seen. And of course, then again, he doesn't know Rocha's right behind him that close either. He looks around, and it doesn't do him any good. But Rocha, I can definitely see him. He's definitely coming. It's the same story as we had a few years back with Shahanga. Can he catch him? Of course, Rick Sayer was being caught in the first year by Shahanga, and Shahanga didn't catch him. So we've had it happen both ways here in Los Angeles. The leader has faded late and not been caught, and the leader has faded late and has been caught. We've got to find out which one it is this year.
We'll go one way or the other. Just over 2 hours now, as you see, and he is virtually...
Yeah, he's going to start walking right here at 24 miles. John is almost walking at this point. He's right at the 24-mile mark. You know, now the thing with Rocha, the double thing is he's got to run under 2:11.28 to make his Olympic team, and they're right on that sort of pace as it stands right now. So try to get a split. 2 hours and 28 seconds for Treacy at the 24-mile mark. 2 hours and 28 seconds. Of course, it's, again, I'm being blocked by the trucks as well, but Rocha's got, there's one Brazilian that's already run a 2:09. There's 2 guys who have run 2:11.28. That's what he needs to get, under 2:11.28 for his Olympic team. But right now, it looks like he's got a better chance at victory.
Tony, you raised a good point about what's going on out there in 2nd through 5th place. Other guys are trying to run to make their Olympic teams, and they're going through their own personal Valhallas, even if they're not going to win this race. And that's the strain that's going on out there.
Yeah, you know, Treacy's last mile that's a 5:34, that last mile, and you can see it when he came up on his aid station. That, I mean, he almost slowed to walk. Now he gets himself back into position. The nice thing for him, though, is if you're going to have a cramping muscle, you'd rather have a slight upgrade than a downhill, because the downhill will stretch that hamstring out even more and bring on that cramp.
He does look like he's struggling right now. I don't think there's any question about it. It's just a question of can Rocha catch up in the short period of time that remains in this, and can Treacy hang on?
You know, if it's got anything to do with guts, that's not going to be a problem for John Treacy. I mean, they're not going to put his stride in a museum, but they could put his heart in his head.
Very well put.
But the problem is that there's certain things that are just beyond your ability to gut out, and a cramping muscle definitely is one of them.
What's the distance right now, would you say, Tony, between the two?
I'd still say it's over 100 yards. It's well over 100 yards.
Oh, try and be, I mean, 100 yards to me says that Joseildo of Rocha may win this race.
Yeah, exactly. Here he is right on the screen right now. He's got some running left in him. It's not, that doesn't look good, does it, when he takes a look backwards? But the problem is he doesn't have this type of running in his legs that the Soviet women's leader does right now. However, if he can just maintain this and not panic, that's his best chance.
He's closing, to me, with every stride.
Yeah, but John's looking a little bit better again. You know, this is the old good patch, bad patch mentality as he's going through. John goes through a horrible patch, and then he'll start to come out of it. And right now, John doesn't look that bad right now. But I'll tell you, L.A., they talk about trying to run fast race courses at different places, but I'll tell you, give me a race course where things happen. Every year, sort of something happens right where I'm sitting.
So that's the way the men's race sizes up as it heads near the finish line. Meanwhile, the women's race, and I'll tell you what, right at the moment, Biktagarova is running faster than either of the male leaders.
You know, if you hadn't said that, I was going to say that. Look at that leg turnover. Look at it just breeze up on these people. This is stunning. I mean, it is truly stunning. This is not ideal conditions for running a marathon. It is for Los Angeles because it's 60 degrees and overcast, but if it were 45 degrees, she'd probably be 2 or 3 minutes faster, folks, and among the top 5 or 6 or maybe 10 marathons ever run by a woman.
2:32.25, the record set by Kathy O'Brien here last year, almost certain to be shattered by Biktagarova. Meanwhile, he looks, to me at least, as though he is struggling once again.
At these moments in a distance race, be it a marathon or 10,000 meters, Barry, you think of everything inspirational that you've ever had in your life. Your coach that died, a relative, whatever it is to help carry you, your children, the Mercedes, some goal that you have, and you block out everything else. You push through barriers of pain most people will never know. Look at the margin here. It looks pretty, maybe he's going to make it to the finish line.
Yeah, that looks like a pretty good-sized margin. We were speculating 100 yards before, and that looks like more than 100 yards.
It does to me, too. It does to me, too.
So that is Rocha in second place. He almost certainly will get second place, but whether or not he can catch John Treacy, and he doesn't really look too much on stride now either.
You know, it's funny, we're not all born equal as far as athletics go, but here's a man from Brazil so close to a man from Ireland, and we've gone 26 miles and one's closing on the other. The human body's an amazing instrument here. Body temperature here has moved up as high as 103 degrees for these athletes, from 98.6 for normal. The resting pulse of these top athletes is under 40 to 45 beats a minute at rest, and during the race course right now, it's up at 180 beats, 4 times normal for them, and they'll be fine at the end of the race. 20 minutes afterwards, body temperature back to normal. Looks like he's picking up the pace again.
Yeah, it really does. Tony talked about that a little bit earlier, and he goes through these periods where it looks like he's really laboring, and now he looks very much on form.
There you can see in the background, see him on the left of Bill Burke. You can see Rocha looking closer to me than I've ever seen him, just over John Treacy's right shoulder on the left part of the screen, and he looks at least, and of course television's difficult.
Head-on lens and a long lens pushes things together, but nonetheless, we haven't even really seen him in the picture, and he is very much there. There is Treacy's in the center of your screen, and here is Rocha, and from that angle, it does look like a considerable margin.
Yeah, but you know what? There's still a mile plus to go, and if Treacy's running 4:25, this guy can make up 30 seconds there. We could have a very close finish by the time they reach the Los Angeles Coliseum. Don't go away, everybody.
Yeah, one thing is Rocha now knows that he has an opportunity to win the race. He is no longer just running to protect second place. He's running to win the race.
Oh, and you try and lift your legs faster, and they will not move. Your body runs out of carbohydrates, which is the fuel source for your body, by 20 miles. We got 1¼ miles to go for Rocha. He does not speak good English, but he certainly can understand the sign 25 right there, of course. But you try and lift your legs, and you just can't.
And he might have moved over to the center of the road just to see where Treacy was. Now he's going to get in behind that police officer and take a form of drafting once again just to get a little bit of a blow. So take a look at the leaderboard now on the Diet Coke leaderboard. After 25 miles, Treacy continues to lead. They say 30 seconds over Rocha. And Dasha continues back in third place. But actually, a very good race for the Moroccan to finish in third place if he does.
It's very difficult in a marathon to go out hard, harder than you should. And there we see how close to the Exposition Park and the Coliseum that we are down there. A man who's familiar with Ireland and John Treacy's heritage, St. Thomas, said, our destiny is to run to the edge of the world and off into the darkness. And in some ways, bodily, that's exactly where he is. He's in no man's land. And it's an experience few will ever know of how low your fuel sources are and the resolve of the human spirit to drag yourself another mile.
Human spirit of this man right now looks to be pretty strong, thank you very much, not to mention his constitution. 2:10.06 right now, and John Treacy again looks to be on stride and not running in pain.
No, you know, he's got this funny stride, and don't fool yourself. He's run this way even at short 5,000-meter races on the track. He's always had a kind of a funny arm motion, but has worked efficiently for him. He's rarely ever been injured. Look how close Rocha is. It just seems like a few seconds ago that Treacy turned that corner.
And Rocha, though, of the two, seems to be laboring a little bit more than Treacy, actually, right at the moment.
Well, his stride has shortened down, I think, in the last maybe 2 or 3 miles, indicative, again, of fatigue. Although it's still good form and better than John's on a mechanical basis. Look, 12 seconds behind. Folks, don't go away.
Not out of the question.
Don't go away. This is amazing.
And here comes Treacy again. And Treacy, Tony Revis, Treacy does not seem to be uncomfortable right at the moment.
Out when the cars got out of the way, and he realizes he's got a lead to play with. And even though he's still dragging that leg around, Jose Rocha is not going to get him. The thing that needed to happen is that Rocha needed to maintain, which he's done this job with a long look back. Now the corner's been turned. He's got a 23, 24 second lead. So that 12 seconds is incorrect. He's got double that lead. John is going to be suffering. He lost a lot of ground in this last 10 kilometers, but he's got enough left in him. His savvy really came on. He played his lead perfectly, and he's going to win it by the margin that needs to be.
Rocha has dead aim on him, but he's going to run out of miles, seems to be the biggest problem.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. He never got into sniffing distance. He never got into it where he got the blood in the nostrils, which would have given him that extra boost. And Treacy just played it right on that fine line of not cramping up. His slowest mile was at 5:34, and he needed to run closer to 6 minutes for 1 mile for it to happen. The crowds are thick. They're knotted together, thousands of them, and they're cheering on John Treacy from Ireland in his first major victory in the marathon at the very site of his greatest victory, the silver medal back in 1984.
Finish line is in sight now for Treacy, and here he comes toward that line. A most impressive win for the Irishman, John Treacy. Here he comes to the finish line. Rocha, a game effort, but it will only be second best on this day. John Treacy wins it.
And a man who deserves a great deal of credit, choosing a relatively warm climate to try and get under his Olympic qualifying standard. #1 and be among the 3 fastest in his country, Brazil, who, by the way, have 3 good marathoners. This is his lifetime best that he will accomplish. Better than the 2:14 plus he ran in Chicago. Excellent performance. Maybe he still has a chance to make his Olympic team.
So Rocha finishes in second place, and Treacy, they say that it takes a lot of heart to run a marathon, and I think he just saw a pretty good indication of just that right here. He is the men's winner in 2:12.28. He would have taken it. It was 3:12.28. So a wonderful win from him. The hugs and kisses from the family. As you look down at the Los Angeles Coliseum, which provides only the background for the finish of this running of the Los Angeles Marathon. And now back to third place, and coming into third place is Peter Renner. So he finished very well, too, and Dasha obviously fading in the final mile.
Right you are. Renner had run a great 5,000 meter, frequently a good indication of your conditioning if you've been training for a marathoner. The biggest guy in the field among the world-class athletes. He is a lumberjack in New Zealand by profession, and this gets him under the Olympic qualifying standard of 2 hours and 14 minutes. Good chance for him to wind up in Barcelona representing New Zealand.
Lumberjack by profession in a tree as a man. That's a big guy. He finishes in third place. Very good finish for him. Really came out of nowhere. First time he mentioned his name all day long.
No nation in the world has ever produced regularly bigger physical specimens who are excellent distance runners. I'm amazed at the size of so many historically from New Zealand. Peter Snell was a big fellow at 165 pounds. Amazing what they've done. Most distance runners are light and small.
Been quite a year for New Zealand. They won their first Olympic medal in the Winter Games this year, finishing second in an alpine event, much to the surprise of everyone. As again, you look at the Coliseum, and the men's race is now over. Let's talk about the women's race. And the women's race, for all intent, was over at about the 10-mile mark. And the leader, as she has been all the way along, Madina Biktagarova, and Biktagarova continues to look strong, tying up just ever so slightly now, but still with a commanding lead over the field.
You know, I think the interesting thing is to see what she actually winds up for a finish time. If you can harken back to what we just showed you in the men's race, and by the way, she has a little over 2 miles to go. And what you're going to see here is, I think, an excellent time.
Catherine Switzer is with the leader. Catherine, she still looks strong.
I tell you, it's really incredible. She's going to obliterate the course record, and she's going to go after some of that bonus money. Let me give you some splits. From 20 to 24, she ran a 5:19, a 5:38, a 5:31, a 5:43. I think, fellas, you're looking at a woman who is a contender for the gold medal in Barcelona when you see a performance like this out here today. Also, really running a good time, and probably will finish a course record, is her teammate, Ramilia Burangulova, who is back there about 150 to 200 yards. I can just barely see her now. But the day is Madina's. You know, she comes from a town called Brest, which is on the Polish border. This town was obliterated completely in World War II, and I think that Madina here is obliterating the course record. All right, you guys, I think we're going to have a great performance.
You are looking at Madina Biktagarova from on high, and we were trying to put some numbers together here while we were in that commercial. And if she continues at the pace that she has set for herself now for the final couple of miles, she is going to be not only breaking the Los Angeles Marathon record, but really putting herself in some pretty prestigious company there.
Well, to share with our viewers a few calculations here, 2 hours, 26 minutes and 26 seconds, ranks as the 10th fastest performer of all time. Let's see if she can get under 2 hours, 26 minutes, and 26 seconds.
She continues to look very strong. Right now, let's take you back to the start-finish line and John Treacy. John Treacy is the men's winner. We're going to get a chance to chat with him right now.
John, we're right in the shadow of your greatest victory, your silver medal in Los Angeles back in 1984, but your dream around that 1 hour and 50-minute mark almost turned into a nightmare when you grabbed your leg.
Well, I was cramping up a little bit, and but when I backed off my pace, I was fine. It went away again, but I was a little scared around 18 miles, and I think that was my main concern. At 24 miles, I could kind of sense that I was near home again. I was able to pull myself together, and plus we were on the flat. It was, you know, coming down the hills that I was cramping a little bit, but you know, I got across that line first, and that's all that really matters. And you know, it's like it's been a long time since 1984, and it's really good to come back to LA and win here.
John, you know, for all the great achievements you've had, the World Cross Country Championships and all, it's your first major marathon victory. About time you got one in the bank, wasn't it?
Well, it was, and I was really nervous coming into this, because I knew I should win this race. And that's all I could think about it. And I said to Fanula, my wife, I said, if I don't win this, I gotta retire. No, I didn't say that. I said that, but I said it in jest, but, you know, it was kind of haunting me, and I'm really very happy I won, and I worked very hard for the win.
John, congratulations. It's on to Barcelona.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Gentlemen, back to you in the studio.
All right, thanks, Tony, and thanks, John. A very fine win for him. He led it virtually from start to finish, and Madina Biktagarova doing exactly the same. In fact, she is destroying a very good women's field. She is going to smash some records, folks.
Well, Barry, I've been sitting here trying to do some calculations, and boy, this will thrill her no end to take back to the Commonwealth of Independent States. If she gets under 2 hours and 27 minutes, which looks assured right now, she collects a bonus, and Dr. Bill Burke has added incentives here for performance of an additional $35,000. She gets $20,000 for first place. She breaks the course record. She gets $10,000. She gets a Tag Heuer watch worth around $2,000, and she gets a car for $35,000 more. And that's a nice grand total of
$104,000, which in Belarusia these days is worth $6.35.
In rubles, maybe, but that cash will go a long way. I mean, that's a tremendous showing by her, and she benefits from the performances here that Dr. Burke wanted to get. In other words, you get appearance money, but you're incented to run well.
But look at the time. You can see it on top of the lead vehicle there. 2:29.38 is what Biktagarova is shooting for, and to say that she's going to break it is to make a great understatement.
She could go stop and have lunch and come back on and probably make it.
And the man that she's running ahead of is Angel Carrera, who is one of the elite men. That's how well she has run this race.
Tremendous. You know, to see the stride, the enthusiasm, the arm action, she's still flicking hair away from the face. Nobody does that in latter stages of world-class races. Nobody.
Now, this has just been an absolute showcase performance to the rest of the world when they look ahead to what might confront them in Barcelona. I mean, this woman is going to be someone to deal with. And she will make this turn now, and when she makes this turn, the finish line will start to come in sight for her. And she still looks strong. She just has not broken form in the slightest for the duration of this race.
The Soviets, now the Commonwealth of Independent States in the past, have suffered a lot as far as deprivation from the family goes. And now they have the freedom to collect the money, and she's going to be a happy woman making the Olympic team, too.
And you look at what she looks at, and what she's looking at is the finish line and a whole bunch of money. But I'll tell you, more than anything else, what she has done is accomplish a tremendous day's work here in Los Angeles, and she finishes it with a flourish. Big time. Big time. Figuratively and literally big time. Her time, a course record, and how a course record. We'll get it for you officially in just a moment. The course record was 2:29.38, set last year by Kathy O'Brien, and she just obliterated it.
I mentioned 2 hours, 26 minutes, 26 seconds. I have her unofficially right on that time within a couple of seconds, and we'll see. There it is, 26:22, making her the 10th fastest performer in the history of women's marathoning, done on one of the more difficult courses that any of those top 10 have ever tackled.
And when you break a course record by 3 minutes and 16 seconds, I mean, I don't know what that would equate to in a shorter race, but it's just simply unbelievable. I mean, that's like Beeman broke the long jump record. That may be stretching it a little bit, but nonetheless, it's really shattering a mark.
If you're a national class athlete, you live once a year for a race that you can savor for a year to put up with all the drudgery and other bad performances, and that was a race of a lifetime. She will savor that as long as she lives.
Well, you know, you talked about the athletes coming over from the independent states. As you look at second place here, and that is Burangulova, who will finish second, and I mean it's a distant second, and she's run a terrific race.
Terrific.
Well, you talk about these athletes coming to Gainesville, Florida, and training, and they really probably have not in the past had conditions to train as they have for this race.
You're exactly right. They have, in the past, though, when I mentioned that they were suffering, Ramilia Burangulova takes second in the women's race, and she also will go to Barcelona representing the Commonwealth of Independent States Olympic team.
And she probably is going to shatter the old course record as well. There it is, 2:28.02. You saw it in the corner of your screen there. The old course record, as we said, 2:29.38. She's going to get a few bucks, too.
Well, you're right on.
Bill Burns got to get out the old checkbook, doesn't he?
Bill Burke, yeah.
So Burangulova finishes in second place, and she breaks the course record. And back in third place, most likely, is going to be Yegorova, the other member of the one-time Soviet contingent, now the independent state. She is from Russia, which was a state, of course, and is still a state in the independent lineup. As you look at the sports arena, and I'll tell you, this area has been home to some brilliant marks today, most particularly amongst the women. John Treacy wins the men. Madina Biktagarova wins the women.
Our friends and family think that we couldn't have chosen a more appropriate place to get married. Everybody who knows us as crazy runner types, and it's just perfect.
You look at the Coliseum and the sports arena, the finish line area of this 7th Los Angeles Marathon from our shot from the Fuji blimp. We've already had the men's come across the finish line, and now from this point on, Larry, it is pretty much the race for the people.
Gary, we're 2 hours and 31 minutes into it, and anybody finishing up any time in the next half an hour has shown tremendous dedication and training.
So we look at now the race that you were speaking of, and this is the race for everyone. This is the race where people are running against themselves, people are running for personal bests, just trying to get to the finish line. And that is pretty much the story. Meanwhile, amongst the pack is Tim McCune, and Tim has been running at about a 7-minute. Let's see, so far Tim has eaten an egg roll, probably gotten a date. What else has he done? Tim, where are you now?
We're somewhere around 14 miles, and we've decided to concede the race. I agree. I'm not going to beat Treacy today. I finally accept this. But I've come along some friends here, and running next to me is a person who's got a special story today. Your name's Karen?
Karen Raymer.
Raymer, where are you from?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Kansas City. What are you doing here?
I came out to celebrate my 43rd birthday and do my first marathon.
Well, let me ask you the pertinent question. Have you done enough training?
Yes.
You're one of the few, then, because I think there's a lot of hurting people right behind us now.
She looks good.
43 years old today. Another woman's winner in today's marathon.
Yeah, right.
We'll talk to you guys in a while.
Tim doesn't look like he's pretty much on stride, doesn't he?
He does.
All right, let's get back to the start-finish line now, and I believe we have the women's winner, Madina Biktagarova. I said it all day long, and you see now she wins, and I can't say her name anymore. Biktagarova. No matter how you say it, it was a tremendous race, and she right now is with Catherine Switzer. Catherine?
And I'm with our winner and a new course record holder by far, Madina Biktagarova from the former Soviet Union, now the CIS, and she's with our interpreter, Olga. Olga, I'd like you to ask Madina, if you would, please, the fact that this was an inspired performance. She improved over her personal best by about 6 minutes. To what does she attribute that?
С чем ты связываешь то, что ты улучшил свое личное время и рекорд трассы на этом марафоне?
Серьезнее готовились, во-первых. Повезло с погодой. Ну и я настраивалась. Очень много ставила на этот старт.
First of all, they had a very, very good training camp here in the United States for 2 months in Florida. And they trained very, very hard. Second, the weather was nice, absolutely nice, and she liked the course very much. And third, she was concentrated on the race, would like to be qualified for the Olympics.
Talking about the Olympics, she has to now be a contender for the gold medal at Barcelona. Has she realized that yet, and what does she think about that possibility?
Ты представляешь себе, что сейчас ты являешься претендентом на золотую олимпийскую медаль? И что ты об этом думаешь?
Я, конечно же, мечтаю. И буду настраиваться, стремиться, вернее, как это сказать, буду настраиваться на победу.
I'm already realized that I can win the Olympic medal, and I will be concentrating on this goal for about 4 months left before Olympics.
Today she had help from her teammates. The three of them ran out together and ran hard and shared the lead. Was that part of the game plan?
То, что сегодня втроем вы начали бежать и лидировали, это было заранее запланировано?
No. No. Не договаривались мы. Так получилось, просто все хотели отобраться на Олимпиаду.
No, it was not planned beforehand to run together, but everybody would like to be in the Olympic team. So they did their best. All of them did their best.
Well, she certainly did her best. And my last question is that now at about the 18-mile mark, she really split from the others and quickly ran like 5:19s and 5:30s. Obviously, she's got a lot more in her. What does she see for the future?
То, что ты вырвался ото всех на там, каком 26-м километре, как ты чувствовал себя очень сильно?
Мне тоже было тяжело, но надо было оторваться, чтобы стало легче.
It was her race strategy to push herself on the 20th mile to be ahead of the group, and it took her a lot of energy. He inspired her a lot.
Well, she looks great, and it was a terrific performance out here today. She certainly earned every bit of that $104,000. Congratulations, Madina. Thank you, Olga.
It was a terrific win for, I love the headband. I love Washington State potato
Let's
head.
be her agent and call Washington State and make sure she's taken care of. What
Exactly.
do you say?
As they say in Belarusia, this spud's for you. Meanwhile, back out on the race course, we're going to take you back to mile 13, where an event that well, I got to tell you, you just don't see this very often in a marathon. We're going to have a couple getting married. Renee Hambly is at the services. Renee?
Such an emotional experience. This is what we've all been waiting for. The race was very nice, but let's look at the wedding. This is what we've been waiting for.
Peter, repeat after me. Lauren, take this ring as a sign of my love for you.
Lauren, take this ring as a sign of my love for you.
I pledge to be honest and open.
I pledge to be honest and open,
Loving and caring.
loving and caring,
Throughout our life together.
throughout our life together.
I will stand by you always.
I will stand by you always.
I will support you.
I will support you.
I will love you completely and unconditionally.
I will love you completely and unconditionally.
Lauren, repeat after me. Peter, take this ring as a sign of my love for you.
Peter, take this ring as a sign of my love for you.
I pledge to be honest and open.
I pledge to be honest and open,
Loving and caring.
loving and caring,
Throughout our life together.
throughout our life together.
I will stand by you always.
I will stand by you always.
I will support you.
I will support you.
I will love you completely and unconditionally.
I will love you completely and unconditionally.
I happily and proudly pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.
What do you think? What are the odds of this?
Here we go. Go ahead, Lauren. Feed your husband. Oh! Okay, Peter. Tim, get this to Lauren. And they're off on a beautiful life together. They're going to finish the last 13 miles, and so you be looking for them at the finish line. Let's go back to you, Barry.
Thanks, Renee. That's great. That's a great story. They got 13 miles now to run. Get over the excitement of the wedding, if you will. So they're underway. They're at about mile 15 now. We'll try to keep up with them. Tim McClune's still on the course. John Treacy has won, and so too is Biktagarova. But we still got plenty more to go. So the race for the people continues now, and it still will continue for a long time, probably on into the evening, long after we have jumped off the track here. You look at the halfway point of this race, and you got people walking, you got people running, you got people trotting, and it's going to be that way, I'm sure, for most of them for the rest of the way. Brian Jenkins right now is down near the finish line at Menlo and Exposition. Brian, what have you got?
Well, when those newlyweds get to the finish line, they'll find the party right here. Plenty of great food, the best food money can buy. You can wrap it around a little Jamaican reggae music. If you're in for a little culinary delight, you can find just about anything you want. You got African soya, you got Mexican fajitas, you got Japanese teriyaki, just about everything. And when you get through eating all that stuff, you can come by here and have your blood pressure checked. But you can't get a real appreciation for that up in the cheap seats in the studio, so if you get a chance, get down here, we'll be here. Back to you, Barry.
We don't have any blood pressure. That's the way it's been here. And you can see that place just starting to fill up, and that's going to be a very active place as this race moves along and everybody finishes. Bulk up. You've done your job. Now you can go in.
You know, a tip of the hat, Barry, to the people you're seeing there at the finish line, spectators who have waited for their loved ones or have been out here making this race happen. The cake of the Los Angeles Marathon are all the people you're seeing on camera right now out in the race. The frosting's the elite, but the cake and the body of the race that makes the event so great are the people out there who are trying their best.
And you can just consider us a couple of crumbs who are talking about it. And meanwhile, let's take you back to the finish line once more as we have the ceremonies for the men's and women's winners sponsored by Mercedes-Benz. Let's get you now to the ceremonies for the women.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge all of the runners, all 20,000 of them or so, who have made this, the 7th Los Angeles Marathon, the best ever. Los Angeles City Mayor Tom Bradley and Bill Burke, president of the Los Angeles Marathon, are here now to place the traditional laurel wreath signifying victory on the heads of our winners. Bear with me now on this name. Madina Biktagarova, how'd I do? Of Belarusia, Pozdravляю, and John Treacy of Ireland. Congratulations to both of you. They came, they ran, and they conquered, right? Well, they won't have to run home. They'll be able to drive home in luxury in their brand new Mercedes-Benz. And to present the keys to our winners, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jerry Giaquinta, Vice President, Western Region, North America of Mercedes-Benz. Okay.
Thank you, Tony. I'd also like to congratulate all the runners in today's race and the volunteers that made this happen, but most especially the citizens of Los Angeles to support this fine event. And now I have the easiest job. It's my great pleasure to present two 190E Mercedes-Benz sedans. First, to the winner of the women's race, Madina, it is my pleasure to present you the key. Congratulations. And now, for the winner of the 1992 Los Angeles Marathon, it is my great pleasure to present the key to John Treacy. Come back next year and defend your title.
Jerry, thank you very much. We will have more awards a little later on. Right now, we return to Barry Tompkins in the studio.
We want to take a moment to thank our international audience all around the world for joining us today on coverage of the 7th City of Los Angeles Marathon. For everybody involved, Tony Revis, Larry Rawson, Catherine Switzer, and Tim McClune, I'm Barry Tompkins. We'll see you next year.
Retained his position on his feet, and now it's Kerwin almost on his own here. Well, he is.
Danskin, running and racing. Danskin Running and Racing is brought to you by Alamo Rent-A-Car, where all the miles are free, and by Precor USA, precision exercise equipment. Hello everyone, welcome to Danskin Running and Racing. I'm Marty LaCourie. You know, every week on our show we try and go around the world and the country and cover the races with the best athletes in the world going after big prize money. But the truth of the matter is, in this sport, the main emphasis is on thousands of races during the year that are run mostly to raise money for charity. And today we're at one such race in Orlando, Florida. Why this race of all the races run throughout the year? Well, it's a pretty good reason. They named the race after me. We'll be here in Orlando at the Orlando Sports and Fitness Show, and they'll have a rollerblade race coming up later on, which I'm going to enter, and a lot of other fun things during the day. So stay with us. We'll be back for the start of this race right after this week's first race highlight. Russia's Albina Galyamova seemed right at home at the 20th Northern Telecom Cherry Blossom 10-miler in Washington, D.C. Seemingly oblivious of the cold, two of Kenya's best, William Koech and number 2, Richard Chalimo, who warmed up as usual. The international field at the 20th anniversary race had the talent to threaten the world 10-mile record. Unfortunately, strong, cold winds would hamper the ambitious athletes. Ordinarily, the Northern Telecom would signal the start of spring in Washington, but with 35-degree temperatures, it seemed like winter was still around. From the gun, a trio of Africans made no pretense of their plans. They would go for it, cold wind or not. Whether they could come back into the wind would be answered later. Within seconds of the starting gun, a gap began to materialize as the two Kenyans, bracketing Boy Akane of Tanzania, went out in a flat-out sprint. Chalimo was ranked second in the world at 10,000 meters by Track and Field News for 1991 and is the silver medalist from the World Track and Field Championships last August. It was truly amazing how they put away Rolando Vera, number 3 of Ecuador, and Martin Patayo of Mexico, number 4, two of the men who are dominant on the U.S. roads. At 4 miles, Chalimo on the right and Koech at his elbow dropped Akane and set about the business of seeing just how fast they could run. The rest of the elite men were now far enough behind to enjoy some of the sights of Washington. On the women's side, Russia's Galyamova had also gapped the field, with only Colorado's Diane Bussa within striking distance. Part of the over 5,000 entries had a little more time to appreciate the course and the fact that they were running in the only U.S. race without an entry fee. Everyone is picked by lottery, and the tab is picked up by Northern Telecom. Richard Chalimo is only 20 years old and is believed by many experts to have the brightest future of any distance runner in the world. His 27:11 for 10,000 meters last year was a world junior record, but also the best time in the world, period. While Boy Akane paid the price of the early fast tempo, the Kenyans pressed on, now into the teeth of a 20-mile-per-hour wind. Both are members of Kenya's renowned world cross-country team, with Koech the African 10,000-meter champion. But camaraderie would go just so far, and Chalimo made his move. 47.06 was well off Greg Meyer's world best, but impressive under the weather conditions. Albina Galyamova had to really bear down into the wind, but continued an impressive American tour. After the race, we spoke with Richard Chalimo.
I think today race anyway was not bad. I enjoyed very well, but the problem only is it was too windy. Yeah.
After the race, the weather warmed up and spirits were high. Richard Chalimo and William Koech with impressive races at 10 miles, and the women's winner Galyamova winning by over a minute.
There's a name that says intensity. There's a name that says competitiveness. There's a name that says youthful passion. There's a name that says winning is everything. There's a name that says it all. It's our name, the Women's Tennis Association.
ESPN International presents English football live every Saturday morning.
Got it back again, and he scored!
Plus a weekly one-hour highlight show keeping you up to date with all the league's action every Friday night. Don't miss a single goal of this world-class sport. English football live every Saturday morning only on ESPN International.
Helter skelter, the Warriors causing trouble. Oh, a shot by Servant Douglas!
Over to Kim. Oh, what a thundering reverse baby cradle right-handed jam.
Get it to Ainge. Ainge over the timeline. Let it fly to the good of the goal. Oh,
NBA action. It's fantastic.
This is just one of the many parts you can play as a young Red Cross volunteer. Volunteer and play your part.
With the arrival of the honorary starter, the inaugural Marty Liquori Race Against Cancer is ready to go. The field is headlined by 2 of the dozen or so Soviet athletes training in Gainesville, Florida this winter and gathering hard currency at races like the River Run, Gasparilla, and the Los Angeles Marathon. Alexander Beljayev, a 2:14 marathoner, ran unchallenged from the start, but still ran hard against the clock, the only way for him to impress other race directors. Women's winner Albina Galyamova has more of a resume, with a 3rd at River Run and a 5th at Gasparilla. We'll come back to Florida for more racing after this report from Todd Rainsberger at the U.S. Winter Biathlon Championships.
This is springtime in Alaska. Not good weather for picnics, but perfect for the Biathlon National Championships. The athletes gathered from the United States and Canada and began their pre-race warm-ups for this Olympic winter sport that combines cross-country skiing and marksmanship. They checked equipment and adjusted rifle sights, and when that was done, it was time to warm up the legs and focus on the concentration necessary for the exertion of skiing and the precision of shooting. The main race on this day was the sprint event, but it was part of 4 days of team and individual championships. Beyond the obvious, the biggest concern for the athletes was an abundance of moose. The late spring brought them down towards Anchorage for food, and they were occasionally mean. On the people side, the concern was defending champion and 2-time Olympian Josh Thompson. He won the 20-kilometer race 2 days earlier and was the man to beat. For the women, Joan Smith was coming off a strong showing in the Winter Olympic Games, and Angie Stevenson had won the 15K race earlier and was also the Summer Biathlon national champion. A light snow dusted the course at Kincaid Park, where the men would race 10 kilometers and the women 7.5. The skiers went off one by one, racing not each other so much as the clock. Josh Thompson was the 14th starter. Later on, the women were paced out onto the course by New York's Joan Smith and Angie Stevenson, who trains in Bend, Oregon. The object is to ski at 90% of maximum effort, keeping the heart rate between 170 and 190 beats per minute. They rest on the downhills, careful to stay within the ski tracks. Then they push hard on the inclines. This is 1992 Olympian Eric Wilbrecht, another of the favorites in the men's race. Their hearts will still be pounding at 150 beats per minute when they calm themselves for the chute. After skiing a third of the total race distance, the athletes come into the range to shoot 5 prone shots at 1.5-inch targets 50 meters away. For each miss, they must ski a 150-meter penalty loop before getting back onto the course. Joan Getchow had a perfect score. In the second lap was Duncan Douglas, another Olympian, but having no luck here. During this week, he's had the flu, an automobile accident, and a run-in with a moose. Now he has to shoot 5 standing shots. A man who needed no luck was Josh Thompson. In the standing shoot, as he had prone, Thompson had the incredible steadiness to hit every target. When he's perfect on the range, he's tough to beat. And Thompson hammered the final loop to win the Sprint National Championship. Eric Wilbrecht finished second, and Joan Getchow was the women's champion. We spoke with the winners.
Conditions were good. There was a little tiny bit of fresh powder over tilled ice, and that sort of negated the effect of the powder, so it was so fast. I had good shooting. It was slow but steady shooting, nothing risky, and the skiing was good.
I was just at the Olympics in Albertville, and it wasn't a very strong performance, so I'm going to really buckle down and just give it my best for the next 2 years and try and go for a better shot in '94 in Lillehammer.
So Josh Thompson wins his 4th national championship, and Joan Getchow beats Joan Smith in the women's division.
The Ray-Ban Sunglasses Olympic Hopeful of the Week is presented by Bausch & Lomb.
1991 was a breakthrough season for Montana's Shannon Butler. Finally in good health, he won the TAC and NCAA 10,000 meters. This winter, while racing in New Zealand, he's already equaled his best 5,000. Butler could be an Olympic surprise, much like one of his early heroes.
I probably first became aware of the Olympic Games when I was in 5th grade. A movie came to town, and my mom took me to it. It happened to be Running Brave with Billy Mills in there. And I didn't know anything about running at the time. I wasn't involved in any kind of organized running activities. I saw that movie, and from that point on, it was such a